Hello, welcome to Thor Talk, the show all about Marvel's resident god of thunder, where I discuss Thor feats, battles, story arcs, villains, and more. On this episode of Thor Talk, Thor goes to ancient Egypt in the one-shot Thor, the Truth of History. Plus, we find out how Thor, being a Norse god, can speak English, and why he speaks English like Shakespeare. All this and more on Thor Talk.
I am Thor the Thunderer, son of Odin, prince of Asgard. I am an Avenger, and this world is under my protection.
Whosoever holds this hammer, if it be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
Thor, The Truth of History is a one-shot that was written by Alan Davis and published in December of 2008. The story begins in modern-day Egypt, where two archaeologists are discussing the Great Sphinx. One believes that the Great Sphinx predates the pyramids by thousands of years and finds proof that there was a significant rainfall in Egypt. The other archaeologist says that this is impossible because there was no significant rainfall for more than 4,000 years in Egypt. Less than 4,000 years ago, in Asgard, Thor and his allies stormed the fortress of Nedra, the queen of Jotunheim. Nedra has secretly created a portal to Earth after Odin forbid it. The warriors of Asgard tied up Nedra, but Volstagg accidentally falls through the portal and vanishes. Thor instructs Balder and Sif to watch Nedra, while he, Hogun, and Fandral go after Volstagg. They go through the portal to find that they are in ancient Egypt, and they set out to find Volstagg. However, they must hurry, as they have made a pact with the other gods to stay away from Earth so that humans can progress without the gods. Thor and his allies decide to ask the people in a local village if they have seen Volstagg. However, they do not seem to speak the same language and are unable to communicate. The enslaved people think that the Asgardians are demons, and they beg for their slave driver to come and strike the Asgardians down. The slave driver attacks, but Thor easily strikes him down. Now the slaves are even more terrified, and they beg for Thor not to kill them. Thor tries to show that they mean no harm by cutting several large blocks for the slaves in order to ease their burden. But the slaves are enraged, as they thought of it as their sacred duty to serve the pharaoh by cutting those blocks. They then inadvertently send Thor to the city of Giza, where Volstagg happened to go when he arrived. Volstagg has found himself being waited on hand and foot, feasting and drinking wine. Thor, Hogun, and Fandral arrive at Giza, where they find the slaves there are starving and thirsty. They are greeted by a worker who takes them to the pharaoh's palace. As they enter, they notice a giant statue that resembles the Sphinx, but with the head of an eagle instead of the head of a man. In the palace, they are offered a great feast, but Thor instead gives all the food to the starving slaves. The pharaoh is angered at this act and signals for the Asgardians to kneel before him. Meanwhile, Volstagg finds out that he was fed in order to fatten him up to be sacrificed, and he is then apprehended. Thor and the others hear Volstagg shout, and they battle their way to him. Volstagg finds that he is to be fed to the Sphinx-like statue, which is in fact alive. Thor hits the creature, but then finds that it can breathe fire. Thor then hits the creature through the palace wall, and the pharaoh tries to control it. However, the creature then kills the pharaoh and blasts Thor with fire. Thor declares that the creature is strong enough to kill a god, but not him, as he blasts it with a colossal strike of lightning. The beast is dead, and its eagle head is burnt off, and years later, that head will be replaced with one of a man. Thor prepares to stop the ferocious storm, but then he decides only to stop the thunder, and let the rain fall for the people there. Thor and the Warriors 3 return home. They are not forgotten, as in modern times, the image of Thor is still engraved on the Great Sphinx in Giza. Now, this is a nice, contained one-shot with some interesting revelations on how Thor affected history in the Marvel Universe. However, it does contain two major errors in continuity. Firstly, the timing doesn't quite fit. This story is confirmed to take place less than 4,000 years ago, and that's very vague. However, the Great Pyramid of Giza was finished by 2500 BC, and when Thor is in Giza, we can clearly see that the pyramid is not yet finished. So the story takes place before 2500 BC. However, Thor was not born until after the death of Christ, which is not even in a BC year. So that doesn't quite add up. It is possible that the portal transported the Asgardians through space and time, meaning they were not just taken to Egypt, but a few thousand years in the past, which is entirely possible since the portal is magical. Now, while this error can be explained, the other error cannot. The other error in continuity is the language. The Asgardians are unable to communicate with the locals, and they refer to their language as Asgardian. The Asgardians speak Allspeak, not Asgardian, which we'll talk about in a second. Despite its flaws, the story also showcases Thor's kindness as he gives food to the hungry and rain to the thirsty.
Hey! Is this you?
Okay, so back to Allspeak. Allspeak, or the All-Tongue, is the spoken language of the gods in the Marvel Universe. According to Thor, in Thor 617, everyone hears the All-Tongue in their own native language, and vice versa. Basically, anyone who speaks the All-Tongue will be understood by all and can understand all. So Thor can speak to a man from the United States, one from China, one from France, and one from Saudi Arabia, and all four would understand him perfectly at the same time. Thor will also be able to understand the Italian, as well as he's able to understand the man from the United States. According to Thor, in Thor number 65 from the Dan Jurgens run, Allspeak includes all the languages of Earth and a countless amount of alien languages. This would include any language spoken by people in ancient Egypt, which shows the error in continuity for Thor: The Truth of History. The All-Tongue also appears in the movies. The Dark Elves speak a language unique to them in Thor: The Dark World. However, whenever an Asgardian hears them speak, they seem to speak English.
You needn't have come so far, Asgardian. Death would have come to you soon enough. Not by your hand.
Also, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode 12 of season 2, Lady Sif walks on a beach where several people are speaking Portuguese.
Eu não consigo entender porque que eles põem marshmallows quente dentro do cracker.
But when she arrives, they both seem to speak English and understand each other.
I must find Kava.
Sorry, I don't know who that is.
There are a few exceptions to the All-Tongue. Some are likely a result of a writer overlooking the All-Tongue, such as the language spoken by a god-killer Skrull in the Thor Secret Invasion miniseries. However, a consistent exception to the All-Tongue is the Old Tongue, which seems to be the primary language of Odin's father, Bor. In Matt Fraction's The Mighty Thor number 4, Odin is unable to understand Bor when he speaks the Old Tongue. Similarly, Thor cannot understand Bor when he speaks the Old Tongue in Thor number 600. But other than that, Thor can basically speak any language, which leads me to my theory of why a Norse god speaks like Shakespeare. The reason that Asgardians say, "Thou hast wasted enough of my time," instead of, "You're wasting my time," is because of the All-Tongue. The All-Tongue is a magical translation for Asgardians, but the English language has been through a lot of changes, and magic is often tricky and unreliable. The All-Tongue gets somewhat confused and translates with a mix between modern English and the English of Shakespeare's day, with the these, thous, thou hast, all that stuff. This also would explain why Thor can't seem to learn modern English, despite being on Earth for many years. But that's just my personal theory, so do what you will with it. Well, that's all for this episode of Thor Talk. If you want to keep up with Thor Talk and all Thor-related news, and possibly vote on topics for future episodes, Follow Thor Talk on Instagram at Thor Talk. You can also keep up with Thor Talk by simply subscribing to Thor Talk on YouTube. Once again, I'd like to formally state that all art and video is owned by its respected companies, and I own none of it. With that said, see you next time on Thor Talk, where...
You'll behold in breathless wonder